best remedy for a heartbreak in college football? Simply put, obliterating your next opponent. And for Akron, well, welcome to Willie B, where South Carolina is going to be playing pissed off and probably taking a little bit of aggression out after what happened last Saturday. Welcome on into SEC Unfiltered. He's Dave Shumare. I'm Cole Thompson, breaking down everything that we will see from the Zips and Gamecocks as they take place at Williams-Brice Stadium. Real quickly, make sure that you hit subscribe and the ring notification down below because this is your source for all things SEC football. Pre-game, post-game shows, live reactions, Sunday Fun Day. Make sure that also you download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow Dave on Twitter at Mock10Sports. Follow me on Twitter at Mr. Cole Thompson. Make sure that you're also following us on social media, wherever you have social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. And make sure that you also check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. This preview is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the promo code SECU when you download the Prize Picks app and you sign up, and you'll get $50 instant play on your first $5 lineup. You want to hit the over on some lines. You want to go ahead and trust that the Gamecocks are going to literally take their anger out on the Zips. Make sure that you hammer those overs and do so at Prize Picks. Use the promo code SECU for $50 instantly. Dave, we've already talked about this a million times. The heartbreak that was Saturday afternoon, LSU, South Carolina, 36-33. I made my thoughts clear. You made your thoughts clear. We're not going to spend too much time, but what we are going to spend a lot of time on is this is your moment to kind of get right. It's to put it in the past. Don't let it affect you for too long because the last thing you want to do is have a struggle game before you have to go play against Ole Miss. But in my opinion, go ahead and take a little bit of that frustration that you had against the referees out on the Zips team. A Zips team that's coming into this game certainly underwhelming at 1-2. Also, according to betting odds, South Carolina is a 95.6 favorite to walk away with not just a win, but also covering the spread.
Yeah, I mean, it's a get-right game. I mean, the coaches, Shane Beamer, Dow Loggins, Clayton White, they're all going to say the right things this week to their team. Like, hey, guys, we got to flush that one. 24-hour rule. We got to go focus on Akron. They have a head coach, as we all remember, Joe Moorhead used to be the head coach at Mississippi State, was at Oregon with Mario Cristobal as an OC. Now he's the head coach at Akron. Creative offensive guy. Was at Penn State as well before Mississippi State. They're going to have a decent plan. Again, they're 0-2 in Big Ten play. I know they're not in the Big Ten, but they played Ohio State and Rutgers and gotten skull and dragged in both of them. Got to win against Colgate. This one, though, for South Carolina, you're right, Cole. We got to work on ourselves. Probably going to see a lot of Robbie Ashford this week, I would assume. Probably not a lot of Lenore Sellers because, Cole, go look at the schedule for South Carolina. The next 3 games, it's a mean stretch there, dude. Ole Miss at home, at Bama, then at Oklahoma before you head into a bye week and A&M comes to town. So, realistically, you're trying to go get one of those 3. I feel like that would be your realistic goal. Go 1-2 in those 3 games. You feel really good. You need to set yourself up well. Good thing about this is, I mean, we've seen some of these MAC teams creep up on teams. We've seen Bowling Green play Penn State well. We've seen Northern Illinois actually get the job done and get the upset against Notre Dame. This is a little different. I do think South Carolina's good on defense. That travels. That's not going to allow, I think, for an upset. Probably how big is this win? What is the point differential here? Robbie Ashford, do they keep it simple? Again, South Carolina does not want to go mount up injuries before this game before they head into that critical 3-game stretch where I think they do need one of them. What's going to happen? I don't know. I could see them coming out a little sluggish right off the gate, just because it's human nature, man. Like you said, that was a heartbreak hotel, man, as our guy Elvis would say. I mean, that was tough. That's a tough win. You just saying flush it 24-hour rule. It's easy to say. It's much tougher to do. We're all human beings, dude, and especially when you're factoring in 18 to 22-year-olds who are on social media just like everybody else in the world now. It'll be tough to bounce back. Got to get it done. South Carolina's going to win this game. I could just see it being a little sloppy and not pulling away as quick as you probably want just because who you have ahead the next 3 weeks and how tough it was last week. And again, Robbie Ashford, I think limited at times. This game plan is going to be really simple, I would assume, offensively. Interested in seeing how this goes. Could see it being a little sloppy, but I'm not going to judge South Carolina good or bad or indifferently, really, from this game just because where it's set up on the schedule.
You still don't know what's going to happen with Lenore Sellers. Is he going to be able to be active for this game? I personally think that it's best to rest him, make sure that he's well equipped for the next game against an Ole Miss team that currently is going full speed ahead on the Lane Train Express. So I'm not trying to go ahead and reach this. But real quickly, when you look back at this defense, what I come taking away from that matchup against LSU, the ability to create one-on-one battles, the ability to create turnovers, the physicality of the front seven. My bottom line is that the South Carolina front seven may not be the deepest in the SEC, but you are not going to find more ferocious than that. That is what you can expect every single play, and it starts with the culture that has been implemented by Shane Beamer. But again, you have the talent, I think, defensively to hold your own against anybody in the SEC. It's why I called them the biggest wild card team in college football this year, because if you tell me that they find a way to beat Alabama, a young version underneath Kalen DeBoer that made critical mistakes against USF, I would believe it. If you play sloppy the way that you did against Old Dominion whenever you travel to Nashville to play Vanderbilt and it comes down to the wire, I would believe it because you don't know what to expect. But what I'm watching is a defense that has separated itself from being a great unit to, Dave, I'm just going to call a spade, an elite unit. They are playing out of their mind right now. There are some questions. Yes, there were a couple of explosive plays. Kyron Lacey got open. You had Aaron Alexander break free multiple times. But ultimately, you're still finding ways to pressure future first-round offensive tackles. You're still finding ways to make a quarterback in Garrett Nussmeier that has been a veteran, at least in the style of offense, into making mistakes. And you can do that against other opponents. You can do that against a Jalen Milroe. You can definitely do that against a Jackson Arnold. Potentially, you can do that against a Jackson Dart if the offensive line does not come to play next week. So I'm looking at this and thinking to myself, it's Akron. Go ahead and play clean football because the last thing you want to do is either get hurt or get suspended, lose a guy with the targeting call for the first half of next game. But you do feel good about this. Maybe take a little bit of that frustration out, find a way to get those explosive plays going, and especially on defense, create as many turnovers as possible. That way Lane Kiffin at least is having a game plan and stay up late into 3 in the morning, the devil's witching hour, to keep this thing definitely one of those that bodes well in your favor.
Yeah, I'm with you. The South Carolina defense, I think you like them probably a little more defensively. There's no denying they're a good unit. You said elite. I don't know if I would go that far, and I would say you're wrong. I'm just not ready to jump into that pool yet. But again, you're right. There's no denying they're a good unit. I think Dylan Stewart's going to find life a little easier this week.
Yeah.
And granted, he probably went against the two best tackles he's going to see all year, in Emory Jones and Will Campbell. This week, you should probably see Dylan Stewart a little bit. Obviously, Kyle Kennard should probably pick up where he left off. Had a dynamic game last week against LSU last Saturday. Again, the defense is going to travel. That's why I'm not worried about any kind of upset here. Score wouldn't shock me if South Carolina didn't cover. But again, I'm not going to hold that against them in this game at all. Like these games now, I mean, Cole, we've seen it. We've talked about it. There's been 3 teams in the SEC, I think, between Texas, Ole Miss, and Tennessee that have really had no hiccups in any of their 3 games. Everybody else, the other 13 teams, you could find holes in their game no matter who they played schedule-wise. But no, I mean, I'm with you. What's the game plan with Robbie Ashford in here? Like, is it very simple? Hey, I would even try to limit Rocket Sanders' carries. Let's see a little more Oscar Attaway. Like, I'm not going to go run Rocket Sanders in the ground here in this game either, because again, you need him for this next 3-game stretch before your next bye week comes to town. Like, so I think this is let's get up early, guys. If I'm Shane Beamer, I'm talking to Dow Loggins, and I'm saying let's get up early so we can kind of get our guys out of here. Because we got a massive, like I keep saying, the 3-game stretch. We got to be healthy rolling into that. Again, I don't care what this looks like. Let's just get a win and be healthy rolling into this massive 3-game stretch, starting off with Ole Miss next week.
Talking about Akron real fast, Ben Finley, starting quarterback, currently has a 56.8 completion rating, 3 interceptions against 5 touchdowns, a passer rating of 121. The ground game has been feeble at best. Jordan Simmons is their top tailback. He's averaging 6.4 yards per play, but as a unit, they only have 254 rushing yards, albeit against 2 quality Big Ten defenses, 1 rushing touchdown on the year. The passing attack, Adrian Norton seems to be their top guy. Defensively, Brian McCoy leads the team with 23 tackles. Here's a stat that I did not think I would imagine. Dave, who do you think ranks second on the team? What position group for Akron ranks second in tackles?
Second in tackles?
Yeah.
I mean, this could be somebody random because you wouldn't have asked me if it was. Is it like the interior defensive lineman, like a nose
It's
tackle?
their starting cornerback. Darian Lewis is currently number 2 with 20 tackles. And if that says exactly where you want to at least see the offense maybe make some of those explosive plays, definitely target the outside. I think that you and I can both call a spade and realize that Lenore Sellers staying in that game changes maybe the outlook and definitely the game plan for Dow Loggins and how this offense is going to orchestrate against LSU, because you know what you have in Robbie Ashford. You know that there are only 5 or 6 really solid plays that separates him from being really a quality backup that you don't really want to see take the field versus a guy that can get you in a win for a half a quarter. Like, that's where we're at. So for me in this game, what I'm looking at offensively, you brought up Oscar Attaway. I do want to see him play. I'm not going to worry about separating yourself as a number one receiver. I don't think you have to worry about Bennett, a Brown, somebody else stepping up in that role, Jacobs for that matter, Campbell for that matter. But when you get the opportunities to attack, make sure that you do. Make sure that when you have a chance to get the explosive play clean football down the field, because again, you don't know how many of these reps you're going to get from a Robbie Ashford per outing.
No, 100%. You're right. I think trying to find that true number one wide receiver is key too. If you mentioned Jared Brown, the Coastal Carolina transfer, Mateo Bennett is another kid that had a big game against Kentucky and Lexington. Like you said, who kind of steps up with that? I mean, I feel like the tight end is a good safety valve as well, Joshua Simon, but I feel like they kind of know what they have in him, and he's not going to go win you games week to week. You're going to need some vertical threat. You're right. Who kind of steps up? We saw Nick Harbor a little bit. Against LSU. Maybe the track and field star comes into his own a little bit against the Zips here. That would be someone else to probably keep an eye on as well from that perspective. You're right. Trying to continue to develop that wide receiver group that I think is going to be critical to how many wins South Carolina ultimately gets to in 2024. They're going to need some guys to step up here. That's another interesting perspective as well. And to your point with the corner leading Akron in tackles, that's probably where Robbie Ashford's game is a little bit. Let him get on the edges to an extent. Let him go attack. Like you said, there's probably some scheme up. You could probably have an advantage up there on the edge. It sounds like they're not setting the edge very well at Akron. But no, I mean, a couple of different storylines. If you're South Carolina, you want to improve. But again, I think the whole key is just win. Let's be healthy, guys.
Rocket Sanders last week, explosive outing. You want to see that against Ole Miss. What you want to also see is that you have the depth. You brought up Oscar Attaway. I think Juju McDowell is another one that you at least got to see what he can provide in this offense. Jacobs, again, at wide receiver, currently number 2, 3 catches, 90 yards. Mazio Bennett, maybe he ends up still having that breakout game. I think that when you look at having a freshman like this, it certainly bodes well in your favor to get him as many targets as possible, because if this is going to be your foundation moving forward versus a bunch of transfers that come on in and are trying to get acclimated to this offense. One guy who already saw what the expectations were underneath Shane Beamer. Well, my big takeaway is, before we get into our our player breakdown, last week you watched as this team kept things interesting against LSU, but you also watched as recruits were coming to Cola. You were watching as people were actually buying into what is Williams-Brice Stadium, for my money, the most underrated atmosphere in all of college football. What is this defense? What this offense can be with the explosivity from Lenore Sellers. You watch Sellers grow up. Dave, in my opinion, it feels like that if you start taking your aggression out on this team in Akron and you really start to show the country, yeah, we're going to make things really challenging for you. We're going to be the toughest out that you face. We don't care what numbers attached to our name. We don't care how many losses are in the column. We are going to make sure that you get to play A+ ball. Recruits are going to be paying attention to that. And honestly, it does feel like at this point, South Carolina, if they can keep this game completely out of reach and really set a standard moving forward in the conference, just from a global perspective, they're going to finish with a top tier class that now separates them and puts them in that next category from being the hunters to the hunted. And certainly at least a dark horse that can be competitive in 2024, 2025, 2026 with a young foundation headlined by Dylan Stewart.
No, 100%. I agree. And are you asking now? Should I give who I'm looking forward to?
Yeah, let's lock this in before we get on out of here. Who's one player that you want to see have the big game? And let's not go with the low hanging fruit. Dylan Stewart. Yeah, he's going to be playing frustrated. Kyle Kennard certainly going to be playing frustrated. But maybe one guy that you want to see take that next step forward.
Cool. Am I going to go with a guy here? I'm going to go with a unit, just because the numbers are not great. This is a game to get right. I know we usually go a guy, but I think it's fair here to go a unit. And to be fair, some of these stats are a little skewed because they have played 2 conference games where some other teams have not. They played, obviously, Kentucky and LSU this past week. But it's got to be that South Carolina offensive line, man. They're last in the SEC right now in sacks allowed, 13. TFLs, they allowed 31. First downs, 49, in their last and third down conversion at 27.5%. The offensive line, I feel like even in that Kentucky game, again, Kentucky, another good defensive front. I think there's a lot of good defensive fronts in the SEC, so it's only going to get harder. But that's not going to be an excuse. It has to get better. If South Carolina ultimately wants to go reach that 7-8 win range, that I think everybody kind of has them a little bit in. I'm a little lower than that. I mean, I think South Carolina fans have heard me say that, Cole. I think you've heard me say that.
Multiple times.
The offensive line has to take that next step, and it starts this week. It can't be, hey, guys, we've given up 5 TFLs again to Akron. The offensive line as a unit has to take that next step, control the line of scrimmage in this one. I want to see big rushing numbers from Robbie Ashford, Oscar Attaway, Rocket Sanders when he's playing. I want to see a big rushing day. Well, I mean, you got to figure out who's wide receiver 1, but let's be honest. Until Lenore Sellers comes back and plays, it doesn't really matter because Robbie Ashford's really not going to be attacking the field that much vertically either when he's in the game. So I don't think you're going to see a lot from this perspective. Even Akron's a team, even if they're putting 6-7 in the box, South Carolina should be able to run against those numbers. I want to see the offensive line take that next step, play well against Akron. That's who again, sorry, I didn't say a specific person. But again, I think you got 5 people. They're as strong as their weakest link. So I think I'm going to go with the offensive line just as a unit. Normally we pick a player. I'm going to go with a unit for this one.
Fine, I'll pick a unit then. I'm going to go with the South Carolina cornerbacks. You look at Nicky Manwari, you look at DQ Smith, you look at Jalen Kilgore, the nickel defender. They've all made exceptional plays in the first 3 weeks of the season. They played really well at times against Old Dominion. They were great. I mean, they were the standouts for my money when you watch them against Kentucky. I think also when you look at, again, Nicky Manwari, I'm going to say that was the play. Regardless of what you think about the other interception, that was the one that absolutely the referees got it wrong. I will stay in my business on that one. That is one where South Carolina fans across the country can complain. But also, I want to see better play from the cornerbacks. Go back and look at that game. Aaron Anderson, 96 yards, 4 critical first downs on 5 catches. Kyron Lacey, 2 explosive catches. He finished with 63 yards. He only averaged at that time 6.2 yards per play, except for those 2 major grabs of 20-plus yards downfield. CJ Daniels, 53 yards. Mason Taylor, Xavier Thomas at times was looking like he was getting open, and he just couldn't find a crease if you were Garrett Nussmeier. Again, you have to realize that the wide receivers that you faced off against at LSU are going to be what you will see on the regular for the rest of the regular season. You will see that whenever you play against Alabama with Ryan Williams, with Kobe Prentice, with Kendrick Law. You will see that when you play Oklahoma. You will see that in other monuments. Next week when you have to play Juice Wells and Caden Prieskorn and Trey Harris, it's going to be a challenge. In my money, Missouri is the most underrated wide receiver core in the country, and they have 5 guys that can be that difference maker. So I want to see the cornerbacks be able to step up. I've loved what I've watched from the linebacking core. I think the front 7 and just the pass rush is great. I feel like that even the interior defensive line, outside of a few miscommunications where they allowed a running back to break free in Durham, they've played really well. The safeties have been awesome. The nickel defense in Kilgore has been great. But just that overall sense of where you are at the outside cornerback position, if you can attack that, I feel a lot better. Dave, let's go ahead and lock in some predictions. Kickoff is set for 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central. 27.5 point line. 27.5 point dogs is Akron. Over under set at 46. I'll go first in this one. I think it's a blowout. I really do. I know that there's going to be some questions when it comes to Robbie Ashford, but I just think that there is going to be this next gear all week. Preparation. And what's not going to happen is South Carolina is not going to look ahead to next week. They realize who's coming into town. They realize what matchup they have. They realize who they have to go face whenever you get a top 5 Ole Miss team. But it starts this week. You can't look ahead. You have to be able to set a standard on what Ole Miss should expect when they come into Willie B. Not what you can expect when you face off against Ole Miss at Willie B. So it starts with explosive plays. I think you're going to watch as Rocket Sanders has a really good first half. Then you're going to go see them turn to Oscar Attaway. You're going to go see them turn to the rest of the running back group. You're going to see them probably get a little bit more involved when it comes to Juju McDowell. I think that you will see a touchdown pass, at least one from Robbie Ashford. I think this defense is going to create a lot of turnovers. I think the big thing that you're going to see in this game, Dave, is this defense capitalize on short field position, and they're going to set up South Carolina where scoring drives happen consistently. I'm going to go final score 45-3. I just believe that this defense is going to be playing with a vengeance. The offense is going to have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, and they're going to take a little bit of aggression out on the Zips. I'm sorry, but you better zip your mouth if you are up in Akron this week, because the last thing you want to do is piss off a South Carolina unit that is really dealing with some heartbreak right now, and they're going to take some revenge out on you.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit lower. I'm not going to say they cover. I'm going to go 34-10. I'm going to go 34-10 game. It's never close. I'm not going to say that there's never in doubt. It's not the Old Dominion game. I'm not saying that. I just think it's a sleepy spot in today's college football with as much continuity is gone, new players. Again, there's no denying it. It's a tough loss. Anyone can say, you can hear your coaches say it, you can hear the fans, you can hear the talking pundits like us, hey, 24-hour rule, get over it. That's a tough loss, man. You easily could have been 3-0, 2-0 in league play. You got your next conference game the very next week at home against probably arguably a top 5 team in Ole Miss coming to town. I think it's a look-ahead spot. It's a hangover spot. South Carolina's never in jeopardy of losing this game. I think you're right, Cole. I do think they get some points off some turnovers, some short fields that the defense does give them. I think Akron probably tacks on a touchdown late when it's 34-7 or something, or 34-3. They tack it on late, a meaningless one. I don't think South Carolina covers. It's never in jeopardy. I just think it's a sleepy game that I'm not going to judge them either way. Like, I think it's just a game as we see in today's time. Hey, man, just get the win, come out healthy, get ready for that 3-game stretch coming up between Ole Miss, Alabama, and Oklahoma, with 2 out of 3 being on the road.
Dave, hate to break it to you, but I'm just going to talk to my South Carolina people. You're playing the Zips. Zip them up. Make them silent. Don't even let them come close to making this thing interesting. But real quickly, make sure you give us your score predictions down below. How do you think this one plays out? Like, rate, review, subscribe. Make sure you're following us on the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow Dave on Twitter at Mock10Sports, me on Twitter at Mr. Cole Thompson, and check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. For Dave Shumate, I'm Cole Thompson. Spurs up, Cola. Peace.